Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily and I am so glad you're here. If you are new, welcome. I make videos about beauty every Saturday and about books every Tuesday. So today we are going to be doing a video I've been excited to film for a while. This is the Eyeshadow Palette Tag, and this was started by two creators that I love, Samantha March and Allie Glines. I will link their videos down below, and I will also link down below some videos from other creators that I love doing this tag. So let's go ahead and get into it.
Honey?
Alright, so the first question is to show your newest palette. So that for me is the Norvina, this is like too much of a name to remember, but it's from Anastasia Beverly Hills in their Norvina line. It's a mini palette and I think it's the volume 2. So I can't remember exactly how all of those words get formatted into a name, but it looks like this. It is, here, it's me, hello. It is this gorgeous color story. It's super unique. The colors are so vibrant. I had looked at this when they released it, but I didn't really want to pay that full price for a mini palette like that. I don't know, I have a hard time with high-end eyeshadow prices, high-end makeup prices in general, but I saw this on sale at Sephora for like half off, so of course I picked it up and it was so worth it. I love it, especially these really vibrant colors right here. The next question is to show your oldest palette, and for me that is the Take Me Back to Brazil palette from BH Cosmetics. This is my tried and true trusty rainbow palette, and as you can see I've hit pan on a few shadows in here, and this is the palette that I reach for anytime I want to do any kind of rainbow look or just anything that requires bright colors. I know I will find it in here. So I was really into makeup in high school, well kind of. I was maybe kind of into makeup in high school. I thought I was good at it. Anyway, that's beside the point. But then kind of later on in college, I started getting back into makeup after a period of just maybe mascara every once in a while. And this was the first palette that I bought for myself once I was really starting to get back into it. Before that, I had just had some small like single shadows or little like, you know those palettes they used to have at the drugstore before like palettes were really a thing? And there was like maybe like 6 colors in there, but they like kind of didn't really go together, you know, like I had some of those. But this was my first real palette that I bought myself. I was so excited. I really wanted to commit and play with color, and as you can see, this palette does that for me. Next up is show your most expensive palette, and for me that is going to be this palette from the Etsy shop Tater Rounds. This is her Country Goth palette, and she doesn't make this anymore, but she's a super small indie brand that sells through Etsy, and this palette is so gorgeous. This is like an all shimmer, like buttery, gorgeous palette, and I just really liked the vibe of it. The shade names are so fun, and the color story is really unique, and I love this palette so much, and I definitely would recommend checking out her Etsy shop. I'll link it down below. I'll link everything down below, but definitely check out her Etsy shop. I know she makes soaps and perfumes and other like single shadows. She doesn't make this palette anymore, but I'm really happy that I got it while she had it stocked, but this was $39, so it is my most expensive eyeshadow palette. Next up is show your everyday palette, and I really like to use all of my palettes and rotate through them so they're all getting some love, but if I had to pick one palette as like an everyday palette, it would be the California Love palette from ColourPop. It's this gorgeous warm tone neutral palette. It's got some oranges, some yellows, some golds, some browns, and it's just, I think this brings out the natural golden warm undertones in my skin really well, and I've always loved every look I create with this, and it's so effortless. This would definitely be my everyday palette if I had to pick. Show your most colorful palette, that would definitely be my Take Me Back to Brazil palette from BH Cosmetics yet again. Show your smallest palette, so that would be either these e.l.f. bite-sized eyeshadow quads or my Wet n Wild Color Icon quads. These are, oop, I almost dropped it. These are a little bit thicker, but these are like a little bit longer, so these are both really truly mini palettes, but I love both of them, and the formula in both is amazing. Show your biggest palette, that would be my Makeup Revolution and Emily Noel 83, the Wants palette. So this is gigantic. It's really hard to store, but the color story is beautiful. I love supporting creators that oh my gosh, I'm filming in a new spot, so I'm getting used to, you know, moving my arms around and stuff, but I love supporting creators that I really like, and I've watched Emily for so long, plus we're name twins, which is amazing, and I really like this shade name she came up with, and the quality is decent in here. It's not the best, but it's pretty good. Everything's workable, and I really like the color story in here, but this palette doesn't get as much love as it should in my collection just because it's so big. It kind of has to live like in a weird spot in my drawer, so I just don't grab for it as often. Show your palette with the best memory. So this one was kind of hard. I really had to think about it. A lot of the creators that I've watched have shared palettes that they maybe got from a friend or that they wore for some sort of really special event, and I don't really have any palettes tied to memories like that, but I decided to go with the Tribe palette by Juvia's Place, and that is this gorgeous yellow, orange, green palette, and this one reminds me of William & Mary basketball. And if I was doing like a spirit type look, William & Mary's colors are green and gold, so if I was doing like a spirit type look to go to a basketball game with my friends and have a great time, I usually was reaching for this palette, and this just, it makes me think of college, it makes me think of basketball, so I had to pick this one for the best memory. Next is show a palette that is worth the hype. So this one I had to think about a lot too, because I don't always buy palettes based on any kind of hype. I usually buy based on, you know, recommendations from a few trusted creators, or just me really wanting to try a specific color story. But for this prompt, I had to go with the e.l.f. Bite Size eyeshadow palettes. I was a little skeptical because I did really use e.l.f. eyeshadows back in the day in high school, and then using them once I'd gotten a little more into makeup, I was like, I don't really know. But e.l.f. has stepped up their game so much, and everybody who hyped these up was totally right. This is the only one I have so far, but I've been trying to cut back my makeup spending, you know, quarantine, online shopping for that dopamine hit has been a little bit too much, but definitely worth the hype. And I also think that the ColourPop like monochromatic palettes are worth the hype. This one is in Baby Got Peach, but I've got a ton of them, and I think these are amazing. The ColourPop palettes in general are just fabulous, but I think the monochromatic palettes are definitely also worth the hype. Alright, next is the opposite of that one, which is show a palette not worth the hype. So, like I said, I try not to buy palettes based on hype, which means that I usually don't have anything that has been really hyped up and then ended up not being good. So for this one, I decided to go with the one Morphe palette that I have, which is the 9B Bronzed Babe. This is pretty. The shadows are nice. You see I've got a big dip in that one because I used it as a highlighter for a long time. And I got this from a wonderful friend back when I only had the Take Me Back to Brazil palette and some like ancient drugstore eyeshadow singles. And she bought me this, which was so thoughtful and so wonderful, and I really enjoyed it for a while. But as I started getting more palettes and getting more into makeup, I just kind of realized that the hype for Morphe in general, I don't know, I just don't see it as much compared to other brands, including other affordable brands like e.l.f. Those $3 bite-sized palettes, still better than this one. Also, part of it is that I think I have a weird reaction to these shadows where it kind of like makes my eyes water more and I kind of like cry away. I don't really understand. It doesn't feel like an allergic reaction, but it's also something that only happens with this palette, so I don't really know. But honestly, in general, I don't think the Morphe palettes are worth the hype. The next question is to show your favorite palette from a favorite brand, and this one was probably the hardest question on the list. Sorry, I'm like in a rolly chair. I'm really moving too much probably. Oh well. But like I was saying, this question was probably the hardest one on the whole list because I was thinking about, I think my favorite brand is probably ColourPop, and I love all of the palettes that I have from them, so it was really hard to pick a favorite. But I decided to pick one I hadn't mentioned yet, which is the ColourPop and I Love Sarah E collaboration, the Through My Eyes palette, and I think this palette is so stunning. The color story is amazing, and it's so versatile. You can make anything from a super bold, colorful look to a really subtle, barely there, no makeup type look to anything in between. I think it's gorgeous, so I really love this palette. And then another one of my favorite brands is Juvia's Place, and my favorite Juvia's Place palette that I own is this one, which is the Deuce or Douce. I'm really not sure how to say it, but this palette from Juvia's Place is also amazing. And this one, I was a little intimidated by the color story at first, but every time I use this palette, I feel so inspired, I feel so creative, and I feel like I really know what I'm doing, even when I'm like trying to combine two very different colors like that. I think this palette is just so beautiful. So this is my favorite one from another favorite brand, which is Juvia's Place. Show your most used palette. So that one is, once again, the Take Me Back to Brazil palette from BH Cosmetics. As you saw, I have hit pan in at least 3 of the shadows in here, and a few, if I could, you know, hold it up to the camera properly. So I've hit pan on 3 of the shadows in here, and I've got big dips in some of the other ones. So for a while, this was really the only palette that I had. So I was using it a lot, and I had a look. I made a video about it like in 2018, I think, so I can link that down below. Can't attest to the quality of that video, but I had a look that I was doing pretty consistently using some of the shades in here. So for a while, this was my everyday palette, because whenever I play with makeup, I like to have fun, and for a while, fun meant bright colors. And now fun also includes neutrals, but I love this palette, and it was definitely my most used. Okay, and for the last question, so that was the last official question, but one of my other favorite creators, Angelica Nyqvist, I think is how you pronounce her name. She is Swedish, and she is amazing, and she is my colorful queen. Her eyeshadow looks inspire me more than anything else in the world. She is just gorgeous and talented, and I love her makeup so much. So she added another question on, I think it's from her, if I'm remembering correctly. Either way, Angelica, amazing. But she added the question, what do you have, like, what's your most underrated palette? So I thought that was a great question, because I think I shared it in a book video. Yeah, in my video about what makes me want to read a book, I shared that when somebody says something is underrated, it really makes me want to buy a book and read it. And I kind of feel the same way about makeup too. So I wanted to share my underrated palettes. So for this one, I've got 2. I know I'm cheating, but one of them is the Midas Cosmetics Flowerbomb palette. So I was introduced to Midas Cosmetics through Smoky Glow. Hannah, another amazing creator that I love. She has a collaboration with them, and I didn't purchase that collaboration because that color story just isn't exactly my vibe, but I wanted to try something from the brand, and I looked on their website, and are you guys ready for this? You ready? This palette is so beautiful! The pressed glitters, you know, normally I'm not even a pressed glitter person, but these pressed glitters are so beautiful, I make an exception. And this color story is gorgeous, and I just never hear anybody talking about this palette. It's a little bit older, not like old, but you know, it's been around for like maybe a year or 2, but oh my goodness, this palette is so beautiful, and it does not get the hype that it deserves. The second underrated palette that I wanted to share is this one from e.l.f. This is the 70s Feels palette, and this is just so beautiful. There's a couple of e.l.f. palettes that, like the bite-sized ones or the Mad for Matte ones, those like 10 pan that were kind of formatted almost like the Naked palettes. I feel like those get a lot of hype, but I've never heard anybody talk about this one, and I think they've got an 80s one and a 90s one as well. I grabbed the 70s one just because that was the color story that spoke to me the most, but oh my gosh, look how beautiful these colors are. And these shimmers, I really thought that they were just going to be like, you know, whatever, like a little bit of shimmer. These are so pigmented, they're so smooth. I love this palette, and I have never heard a single person mention it. And I think that if you like shimmer shadows and you like pigmented smooth shadows, you would love this palette. And if the color story doesn't speak to you, check out the 80s palette or the 90s palette, and you might find colors you like more in there. But oh my gosh, why doesn't this palette get more hype? It is amazing. Alright, so those were some of my favorite palettes from my collection. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. I had a lot of fun thinking it through and then filming it. I love eyeshadow palettes. They're definitely my favorite part of doing my makeup and my favorite part of my makeup collection. They're what gets me the most excited and inspired about makeup, so I had a great time with this, and I hope you liked it. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, and remember to subscribe before you go and to click that bell icon to get notifications every time I post new content. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.